Thanks so much for joining us for another edition of our open mic program. We do have Betsy Broyles Arnold. She's a co-founder and CEO of the Frank and Barbara Broyles Foundation and daughter of Frank and Barbara Broyles. I guess you can realize that. And one, I think, Betsy, is this is something that's so dear to your family because I really felt that this brought it to the forefront about the Alzheimer's going on because your mom contacted it early and your dad was working on that very, very difficult situation where he had to expose basically a very personal family matter.
Yes, it was. So Wally Hall had written an article about it, about Mother having it in the newspaper. And you know, in a way it was helpful because we were able to take her with us, you know, and him, especially everywhere he went, where she would go normally, you know, and people would understand that if she wasn't, you know, perfect, that's why. You know, so we took her everywhere up until the point where she really couldn't go anymore. It was interesting.
And this was really groundbreaking. I mean, this is something that was new to your family, just like many that have never been exposed to this disease. It's like someone has even said, it seems kind of harsh, but sometimes the light's on and nobody's home. And then sometimes they plug in and they're there. And that's how one person that I know very well described it. He says it's very difficult. You have that look that they don't sometimes can identify certain things. Explain how this evolved when you guys first found out with your mom and then your dad.
So it's interesting because they live moment to moment to moment. So if you took your hand and went up and down like you're going over rolling hills, when they're on top of the hill, they understand everything going on around them, who they're with, what they're doing, and they're okay with it. You can see it in their eyes. But when they slide down in the valley, then in that moment, you know, they're unsure of where they are, who they're with, what they're supposed to be doing, and they don't like it. And so that's what that gentleman was talking about. So that's how they live, moment to moment to moment. And in the early stages, you know, that hill is more like a plateau. So they're good longer in between. But as the disease progresses, I mean, it's literally 2 or 3 minutes in between the time that they go down in the valley, if that makes sense. But that's why. It's because it's just up and down. You know, it's moment to moment, and that's one of the things that makes it hard.
Sometimes not even know who you are, a son or a daughter, which is so painful for those caregivers.
So what's also interesting is that as the disease progresses, their age is regressing. So they're literally traveling back to an infant. So from a caregiver standpoint, one of the things you want to do is you want to try to figure out where they are in this age regression or down in the valley. Okay, they're in the valley. And so you ask yourself, well, how do I do that? Well, if you listen very carefully to things that they say, it will give you some insight. For example, if a husband is looking for a wife and his wife walks in the room and in that moment, okay, he's in the valley, he doesn't recognize her, then perhaps he's between age maybe 20 and 50 because he knows he's married, but he doesn't recognize her because she's gray-headed. So if a mother is looking for her children and her children walk in the room and in that moment she doesn't recognize them, then perhaps she's in her 20s to early 30s because she's thinking of her children when they're young. And then when they start asking for their mom or their dad or they want to go home, you know, then you know they're in their adolescence. So to give you an example on Dad, one day I was taking him to the Catfish Hole to meet some people for lunch. And so I'd always prep him. I'd be like, Dad, okay, we're going to go to the Catfish Hole. And I said, Dad, you know, we're meeting some of your old players. And I said, you know what, Dad, a lot of them are from the national championship team. And he looked at me and he said, did we win a national championship? And so, see, now I knew because it was my second rodeo, you know, so what that was telling me in that moment was he was back past 1964.
Wow.
And so no need to communicate anything with him from 64 to the present because he's not going to remember it because he's traveling back, you see. And so but if you listen to stories they tell you, it gives you insight into where they are, you know, because they'll talk about when they were in college or this particular town, you know, when they lived in their 30s. So that gives you insight into where they are, you know, in those moments. And then you can communicate with them about things that were going on during that time in their life. Because, see, their main disability is short-term memory loss, and they keep their long-term memories for a long time, you know, really nearing the end of the middle stage. So, you know, for years they had their long-term memory. So you can always talk to them about that. It's just the short-term that's hard.
Well, it's so important because there's going to be a virtual meeting that you're going to be hosting with the Educational Conference, part of the National Educating America Tour to help Arkansas residents with the Alzheimer's disease. And that's going to be on Tuesday, September 1st, 10 until 12:30. Tell us a little bit how we get connected with the seminar and what we can expect in this seminar, because you have given a light to many people that have just started that journey, and you've done it twice. You've been on this rodeo twice, mother and father. So you've got so much to share, Betsy.
Well, so the conference is through AFA, which is Alzheimer's Foundation of America. The link will be on our website or our Facebook, if you want to do it that way too, which is just broylesfoundation.org. And there's probably the 800 number, so we'll post that too. The conference is it's kind of designated to educate people in the community, particularly caregivers, about the variety of Alzheimer's topics. So I know that I'm speaking, and then Todd Watley, who is an elder law attorney who's wonderful here in Northwest Arkansas. And I guess I should throw this out. Anybody that's listening, I'm very passionate about working with caregivers, and so please reach out to the foundation if we can help you in any way. That I work with families individually all the time. It's my favorite thing. It's my favorite part of the job.
It is one of the most amazing stories when you described it, being atop the hill, and then when they're in the valley, they're at a different age, and that's why they don't recognize. And that is something that these caregivers, I know, that are beginning the journey, we need to talk about this more, to share those stories. And I appreciate you taking time and talking with us.
It's my pleasure. No, I've been doing this for a long time, and I learn a lot even from caregivers that I work with, but it's just trying to figure out the easy way to describe it to them where they understand it. But it just takes years to understand. I mean, literally, when you're in the middle of it, it's hard to understand what it is you're dealing with. That's why I'm so passionate to help people, along the way, to help them understand what it is they're dealing with or what their options are, because most people don't even understand what their options are.
Thanks so much for taking time and talking with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.